Before all of that, some big news expected today concerning coronavirus jabs and young people. The government's expected to greenlight advice from vaccine experts to offer the jab to healthy teenagers aged 16 and over, with the Universities Minister telling us in the last hour an update is imminent. Its expected approval will be given to advice from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, which says healthy teenagers over 16 should be offered the chance to get a jab. Currently, 17-year-olds within 3 months of their 18th birthday can get their first COVID jab. After that, the only under 18s who should have been offered a vaccine are young people aged 12 to 17 with certain underlying health conditions or who live with an at-risk adult. But there's still a way to go to get jabs into the arms of young people who are already eligible. Analysis from Sky's data and forensics team last week found that 2 in 5 people aged 18 to 29 in England still hadn't had their first jab. In the last hour, we spoke to the university's minister, Michelle Donnellan. She was reluctant to preempt the decision, but I pushed her, as you would expect, on whether she was at least curious about what might be announced.
I am curious, but I don't think my speculation will give anybody any clarity. We should all await for that policy announcement following JVCI's update on their advice.
I also quizzed Ms Donnellan on whether the government will consider introducing cash incentives to encourage young people to get jabbed.
I think the biggest way that we can get young people to be vaccinated is to promote the benefits of vaccination. And we've got some fantastic role models from across different sectors, including sport and culture, that have come out and really emphasise those benefits of getting vaccinated. But we'll keep everything on the table and review all options for incentivising everybody to get the vaccine.
Let's speak to Luke Pollard. He's the Shadow Environment Secretary. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Pollard. Cash for jabs, what do you think?
Well, if it helps with the increase of rollout of the vaccine for young people, that's a great idea. I think we should try a whole range of things. But I think the best way to get more young people to take the jab is to have that message communicated by other young people to young people, because what we want to achieve is that last cohort, that 30% or so of young people who haven't yet come forward, to feel that they should, to be encouraged to do so, to understand the benefits of the vaccine for themselves and their families. And I think the best way to communicate that is not necessarily to have ministers standing behind a podium tell them that. It's to have people they trust, they look to, people from their own age range, to be able to make that case for them. Certainly, I think that would be more powerful than anything myself or a minister can say to encourage that final take-up of those young people.
Oh, I don't know, money talks, doesn't it? What sort of amount do you think might swing them?
Well, I mean, the difficulty here is that I'm a 41-year-old bloke. I'm not a young person in the target cohort. So what I want to see is actually those young people come forward and actually say what incentives, what encouragement would be most useful. And I think, being able to communicate what the challenges are to those young people by other young people, I think is the right way of communicating this message. Bear in mind that these are the same young people who've been subject to the exam chaos over the last year, that are subject to the uncertainty that sometimes get blamed by government ministers for doing what they've been encouraged to do, going out, enjoying themselves when restrictions lift, and then get blamed for a spread in the virus. So clear, consistent messaging being shared by people they trust, often people in their own age ranges. I think the use of celebrities and people that people look up to, role models, are a good way of doing it. But we need to try all these different measures, all these different approaches to ensure that everybody takes up the jab. And I think the best way of doing that is through powerful, consistent, clear messages communicated by people they trust. And that should be the case where that is aiming at an 80-year-old person or someone who's 16, 17, 18. You've got to find the right message to get there. I'm not always convinced that ministers are that right message.
Get a word in edgeways here. It's the younger people that we need to convince. 30% of them up to the age of 30 still not been vaccinated. Joe Biden thinks $100 should do it for people in the US. Do you think that's a reasonable amount here in the UK, £100 or so?
Well, I'd want to see what the evidence is to see where that would work. But I mean, from my point of view, getting everyone double jabbed is the national mission we need to support. Labour supports that effort nationally, but I want to see what is most effective. And I think the best way of doing that is, instead of getting a load of politicians in a room to work out what is the right solution from their point of view, let's get young people, let's get them to be the communicators, let's get them to design that incentive system, because then it will be more effective. Because ultimately, if we're using public money to encourage any type of vaccine take-up, I want that money to be well spent. And that means having it to be as on message, as on target, as useful as it possibly can be. But I think the vast majority of young people have already taken up the vaccine. They are the best people to communicate what was the experience, how did it how did it make them feel, how's that changed their interaction, especially with some vulnerable people in their family.
Thank you. OK, you've said all of that to me once already. Thanks so much indeed. We only have a limited amount of time, as you know. It's a lot cheaper giving kids £100 than what it costs to put people in ICU, I'm guessing. Let me ask you about vaccinating 16 and 17-year-olds. Good idea?
Well, it's been carried out right around the world at the moment in a safe way. And if this increases the resilience of our nation and reduces the number of people facing hospitalisation or facing long COVID, then I think it is a good idea. But I would like to see, as well as us vaccinating people at home, is making sure we're putting the same effort into ensuring that vaccinations are taking place around the world. Because in the middle of a global pandemic, there's something that sits ever so slightly uneasily with me, as we're vaccinating some people who are lower risk in the country, where there's still higher risk people internationally who haven't got that. The answer in politics, as is always the case here, is and rather than or. So we need to do all those things at the same time. But I think we should be encouraging young people to take up the jab. It shows that it's working in Europe and America in particular, and we need to build on that success so we can get out of this horrible pandemic we find ourselves in.